Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another live and exclusive Evening With. It is part of a series of interviews brought to you by the wonderful team at Theatre by QE2. Let me start, as I always like to do, by introducing myself. My name is Chris McCarty. I'm delighted to be in the hot seat once again. Over the course of the next half hour, I will be in conversation with another member of sporting royalty. Before we welcome him into the conversation, very important that I say a massive thank you to all of our partners, not only Theatre by QE2, H2 Productions, Dollars and Arts, Book My Show, and Outside the Box events, because of course without partners, events like this simply not possible. We've spoken in the last week or two to Mark Lawrenson, a Liverpool legend. We were in conversation last week with Bernard Gallagher and Stephen Gallagher, the family of golfers from my home country of Scotland. Today, well, I'm delighted to say we are joined by a cricketing great. This is a man who, well, in the 1990s, my mum was a fan of this fella, and I think she still is as well. He has turned from a wonderful cricketer to a media personality. His show in the UK on TalkSport, Drive Time with Adrian Durham, is one of the very, very best. It gives me great pleasure to welcome into the conversation the one and only Darren Gough. Darren, good evening, my man.
Good evening. How you doing, sir?
I'm very well, Darren. Is that okay for a build-up? I've done you a decent service there.
Oh, you have, and you were right about the 90s, mate. That's why I've got a bad back in older age, mate, carrying the rest of it all the way through the 1990s. It wasn't easy, that.
Well, listen, there's so much for me to discuss with you, Darren. I want to put one thing straight to bed if we can. You're a handy footballer, and I know football's returned to our screens over the past few days. The Premier League is back. You, of course, have moved into the pundit sphere, but you're a handy footballer. How close were you to making it professional?
I always get asked that, and it's an interesting one because football was my life, really, if I'm going to be honest, up to being 16 years old, where I always believe in professional sport, especially you get three phases. You get the talented, real youngster, 7, 8, 9 years old, who takes the game by storm. He gets in all the age groups as an 8 and 9 year old. I was in the under 11s. I was one of the best players, even at 8. I was all the way through till about 14. People then started to catch up and grow. They had the second phase is around that 14, 15 year old where people then get stronger, they get bigger, they turn into decent footballers. And then the third stage is that later developer at 17, 18, 19, who then goes on and think, oh, where did he come from? So for me, for football, right up to 16, I thought that was going to be my life. I really, really did. But then cricket came from nowhere. I was always decent at cricket without being in the county setup, if you know where I come from. So I played for my town, which is Barnsley, that's where I come from, in South Yorkshire. But I could never really go to that next level. I could get to the trials, but I couldn't get into that Yorkshire schools. And then at 16, I was suddenly in the 16s, the 19s, and playing for Yorkshire second team. So it was really quick turnover from football to cricket. So I started at Barnsley. I was there till I was 16. Didn't get a contract. A guy called Phil Chambers used to play for Barnsley, captain Barnsley at football. He was at Rotherham United, manager at Rotherham United at the time with the great Norman Hunter, bless him. And I went there for a short period. Got paid £27.50 a week, which was YTS, youth training scheme they called it. But it didn't happen. And, cricket took over pretty quickly, and that was it. I'd gone to the cricket world.
Was there a mourning period? Because I would imagine, Daz, and it's well documented, a big Barnsley football fan yourself. Were you hell-bent on becoming a footballer? Obviously, you were very good at cricket, but did you have a mourning period? Was cricket like the kind of ugly sister of your sporting loves?
Still in mourning, mate. I'm still in mourning. I wanted to be a footballer. I was desperate to be a footballer. And I'm lucky enough now, it's my main job now, although I obviously do cricket as well, cricket commentary, but my main job is talking about football every day. Football's back. We've been talking Bundesliga, now we're talking about the Premier League. We'll be talking about VAR controversies again. Of course, I miss football. And I went through a period, you know, when I went to cricket, where I didn't really touch a football for about 4 years. Didn't actually want to, because I missed it so much, but I didn't want to start picking it up because it would make me want to play again at the weekend. And obviously that risk factor of playing football when you're a cricket player would have been huge. And if I'd have got picked up an injury, it would have affected my career in the whole. So I just basically binned it for a while, didn't do anything.
You were a heck of a player, Darren, and I'm not saying that. You've not paid me to say that. You look at the stats, 229 wickets in 58 tests for your country. Incredibly proud, I'm sure, for you and your family, for you representing your country. When you look at what's gone on in the last week over in the UK with someone like Marcus Rashford, 22 years of age, Darren, he's done an awful lot. He has put in it, let's be frank, unbelievable actions over the course of the past week or so. When you compare and contrast yourself as a young man, because you were once upon a time the boy wonder of English sport, I mean, what do you say to what Marcus has done? And again, comparing and contrasting that with when you broke through, I mean, what's changed?
Well, they've got a huge responsibility now on their heads, and what Marcus Rashford has done. I was lucky enough to interview him, you know, last year. I'd never met him. I'd seen him play as a talented footballer, got his opportunity through a few injuries, actually. He came from nowhere, didn't he? Let's be honest about it. They said at the time there was probably better players in the youth team. He got that chance through Van Gaal and he's took it. And this year, he has gone from a young man to his mum must be so proud of him, what he's achieved. He started this season as a footballer, banging the ball in the back of the net and saying to people, I can score 20 goals a season instead of 10 to 12 goals per season. And what he has done over these past 12 weeks, I'm absolutely astounded. It's been, for such a young man to do the things he's doing is, I mean, people say a rise Sir Marcus, don't they? I'm not quite sure it's going to go that far. Can you imagine us for the rest of his life calling him Sir Marcus, a 22-year-old kid who's from Manchester, who's now playing for his boyhood club? I think he will be honoured in the honours, in the birthday honours or the New Year's honours, whichever it may be. I don't think he'll be quite a knighthood yet, but for someone so young to take it on his shoulders and do what he's doing is amazing, mate. It really, really is. And why it's touching everybody's heartstrings is because he's lived it. He's lived it. We can all get involved. We all get involved with charities. And some people do it, foundations and whatever it may be, and they donate to lots of different things. But what he's doing, he's giving back to where he come from. And I think that's what gets me. That's what touches with the nation and with everyone in this country. And that's why the donations have been pretty big. And the letter to the MPs was a very emotional letter.
When you go back to the 90s and yourself as a young man, Darren, did those outside issues, you're someone that just played with an abandonment, you always played with a smile on your face. Was it blinkers? Were you just very much, it's cricket and cricket only, that's where that's my realm and I just want to concentrate on that as a young man?
Not really. I mean, we all like the extras, don't we? I think one thing I always remembered is, but for me, cricket, I started, like I said, at 17, 18 with Yorkshire. What people don't realise is, but when I played for Yorkshire's second team, and I first played at a county ground, a first-class county ground, I'd actually never been to a first-class cricket match. So when I played for Yorkshire Seconds at Edinley, I had never played at a first-class cricket ground. I'd never been to watch a first-class cricket match. Now, I could name you about 50 football grounds I've been to watch football games, watch Barnsley or watch Tottenham or watch other football clubs, but I'd never been to a cricket game. I'd never seen Geoffrey Boycott play live. And then suddenly I'm playing for them and I'm travelling, my debut's at Lord's and I'm there and playing cricket. So people don't believe that, but it's the truth. And the second one is, I went there through a period of 3 or 4 years where I didn't quite know what was happening. I couldn't quite get in the first team and hold down a place. I was playing a game, then being left out again, then playing a game. and it was so frustrating, and I was on the verge of leaving Yorkshire. But my career there, again, it's like almost at the start. It was a massive jump. 1993, I got an opportunity, a couple of injuries in the first team, and I finished the season just smashing wickets left, right and centre, Yorkers. They'd never seen an England bowler doing that. English bowlers have always been that line length, hit the seam, a little bit of swing. Suddenly they've got like a kind of an overseas fast bowler, someone like Wakar or Wazim running in, bowling reverse swinging Yorkers. And picked for the England A team, smashed that tour, then picked for England, and then the contracts started coming in. And obviously I was quite marketable as a youngster. I was a decent looking lad. Not aged that good, but decent looking lad. But I used to get all the contracts. I was on the verge. The one thing that really bugs me to this day, I was on the verge of the Nivea deal. You know, Compton used to be the Nivea boy, and the Brill Cream boy, the Brill Cream boy, and that was always the contract I wanted. My agent had just about sealed it, and then David Beckham came on the scene and scored that goal from the halfway line, and got engaged to Posh Spice, and he took it. Now, when it was announced, but he'd just signed a £1 million contract with Brill Cream as a youngster. My contract, I was looking like 100,000. I'm thinking, hang on a minute, how come they were talking to me about an 100,000 contract? Beckham, on the other hand, his agency were talking about £1 million contract, and he got the gig.
Have you ever had words with him about that, Darren? He still owes you that 100 grand, does he?
I know, listen, 100 grand would be nice, wouldn't it? But I think everybody in cricket, I thought he would have stayed in cricket, the Brill Cream boy. Kevin Pietersen came back and did it, didn't he, for a short period when he was at his peak. But they ventured into football for a short period with David Beckham, and who can blame him? He's a pretty decent looking lad, isn't he, old Bex?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is. He gets better with age as well, does Bex. I want to ask you on that, Goughy, actually, because you took a bit of an unusual route into cricket. It's refreshingly honest of you to admit that you never had been to see a first-class cricket match. In that regard, then, were you seen as a bit of an outsider, a bit of a pariah? I mean, how were you welcomed in? And perhaps give us a bit of an insight. Who was the man to put an arm around your shoulder and welcome you into the group?
Yeah, it was pretty strange as well, because obviously my schooling wasn't private school, which is a massive thing in Yorkshire, especially in the schools area. When I go back to that school issue, I went to a school called Priory Comprehensive. It's a pretty rough school, let's be honest about it. There's 3 communities come together. I live in a place called Mcgrath. There's another place called Lungwood, which is kind of where it's a lot of mining community, the old mining community in South Yorkshire, and it was quite rough at times. And what you got 2 areas. They considered us posh. Let me assure you, I'm not a posh kid whatsoever. My father has done every job from being a milkman to a rat catcher, pest control, to a lorry driver. He's done everything, my dad. He's worked hard his whole life, and he still does now, and he's 70. He loves work. He'll never pack in. He'll be working when he's 80 if he's still with us. Well, hope so. My mum was a midwife. But when I went to that school, but you can imagine the way people looked on us. They thought we were posh. We weren't at all, let me assure you. But there was a lot of trouble at my school between those 2 communities for the first 2 years till everybody settled down. And it was a tough upbringing. It really was. So football was kind of, you would always consider footballers, they come from that sort of background. Cricket tend to be that private school sport when I started. And when I went into Yorkshire side, I would say not so much Yorkshire. I think some of the other counties were a lot of private school boys. Still at Yorkshire, we still had some. And when I came in, coming from a football upbringing, I remember going in my first day, and I got an earring, and I got long hair to about here, which was my hero growing up was Glenn Hoddle. He was one of the heroes, along with Sevi Ballesteros and Ian Botham. So I had 3 sporting heroes. All did well in 81, 82 era when I was 11 and 12. That's what I talk about, where something grabs you. And I remember going in my first day, and Steve Oldham Still speak to him now. Only spoke to him yesterday. He's a lot older than me, and he said, right, turn back round. Edinley's about half a mile that way. He said, take that earring out, get your hair cut, and then come back. And I said, what do you mean get me a haircut? He said, well, there's your cap. When you put your cap on, the hair can have an inch underneath the cap when it's at the back of your head. He said, when they cut it to that level, come back and you can start training. And that was my first day at Yorkshire. That was Steve Oldham. And to this day, he's like a father figure. He's someone I speak to on a regular basis. He's very opinionated. He's old school Yorkshire. Very proud of his roots. But he knows my game inside out. And he's the guy who saw me when I was 15, when I wasn't getting picked for Yorkshire schools. And he's the one who said to the guys, who were all school teachers then, because he's run by schools, he said, what are you doing with this kid? Why isn't he getting picked? He said, he's got the most talent out of all of them. Why aren't you picking him? And then when he became owned by the county at 16, obviously I was his first pick. So, and then that's it. My career just went like that.
It's amazing. And then obviously when you say your career just went on an upward trajectory, you look at your England career, Darren, 58 tests, 229 wickets, as I mentioned. 1999, was that the golden year? Is that the year when you look back now, you think, Jesus, I couldn't do much wrong that year?
Yeah, do you know, I look back on my whole career and lots of great times, some not so great as well. I mean, injuries played a big part in my career, and central contracts, and the way cricket was in the 90s was just disorganised. Selection policy was all over the shop. I never played with my golden four, which would have been obviously myself, Dominic Cork, Andy Caddick, you could have said Dean Edley in there. That would have been the golden four for me. It would have been a great attack, so much variety. And we policy was all over the shop. We went to Australia in 97, I think 98, and Caddick didn't get picked. I mean, how can you not pick Caddick for one of the England tours in the 90s? It was ridiculous in itself. And it was like that all the way through. 58 tests, 229 was, I think my strike rate is still the best since Truman, so I'm pretty proud of that. I wouldn't have minded beating Truman. Pretty proud of my career, and also sad. I'm also sad as well, but I missed so many games through injury.
The I guess standout moment, or one of, I don't want to put words in your mouth, I'll look at the Sydney test in 99. Darren, you'll remember this fondly. I think your figures 3 for 61, if memory serves me correct. You got a hat trick in Sydney. One of the men that you skittled out, Glenn Mcgrath, who I'm sure was a hero of yours as well. I mean, talk us through that. And was that spell and that hat trick, where does that stack up in your list of achievements?
Oh, I mean, listen, the hat trick was an unbelievable personal highlight. I always talk about that tour fondly. The game before for me meant more. We were losing. We were talked about being the worst England team to ever go to Australia. I actually thought we had a good side that trip. We had a good bowling attack with me and Headley. We had Fraser in there as well, Al Malali. We won in Melbourne, which was a terrific moment and a turning point, actually. And we made the series 2-1. Going into Sydney, we had a chance of drawing the series. We'd have still lost the Ashes. They would have returned it. But we went into that game, and we should have won in Sydney as well. If you remember, Slater was run out when he was on about 5, and he was given not out by Darrell Air. How he did not even go to the third. It was ridiculous. He was out by... honestly, it was a joke. He was out by 3 yards, and he went on and got, I think it was 80 or 90. And they went on to win the game. So we lost that series 3-1, but we should have actually drawn that series 2-2. Every single player believes that. And that would have been a great achievement against that great Australian team, because that team was great. That team was great. But in that game, obviously, the hat-trick came, and it was an amazing moment, because after Melbourne, when we had terrific celebrations, we obviously went into that New Year's test. First day, and we lost the toss. They obviously batted as usual, because you're getting runs in the ball in Sydney. And they were flying. They were going away. They were on a flyer. And we came back well, didn't we, with the second new ball. And when I took that, it was like 5:30. And we still had 10 overs to bowl. And I'll never forget, because we had a party that night. It was the sponsors, Vodafone, had put on a big party. And we had to leave the ground bang on 6 o'clock because we were getting picked up. We were meeting all our families. We were going out on some boats. So we had to finish bang on 6. So when I took the new ball, the pressure was on, and we got told by the umpires, listen, get through this. We've all got to be leaving here on time. I said, 10 overs in half an hour. I've got second new ball here. It's an Ashes game. And they're talking about, let's get on with it, short run kind of stuff. And I said, nah. So I was a bit stiff. It had been a long, long series, emotionally drained. I'd lost my grandfather during the first test, just before the first test. So I was drained from Melbourne as well. And I just remember running in and just thinking, right, just get the ball somewhere in the right areas. I was tired, physically tired and mentally tired. Last series, they were in a great position. And the first 2 balls I run in, and they're real big outswingers. And Darrell Air went to call a wide, and he said, come on, Daz. He said, I can't call a wide. He said, we've got to get through these overs. Get back to your mark and get on with it. So the third one, the third delivery, this is honestly, all I'm thinking about is, but just get it straight, Daz. Just get it straight, because we've got to get off on time. My whole family had left to get changed for this party. After crowd had left, because they were in a position where they had to get back to the hotels for their evening meal, because they all buy that evening meal breakfast package, don't they, when they're going on these tours. So that anybody left in the ground, and I run in the third ball thinking straight, and I slipped on the crease with my front foot, and I dragged it down short of a length. But obviously I was bowling pretty quickly during that period of my career anyway, and dragged it down. It bounced a little bit. He nearly gloved it, and it went through to the keeper. But as you go through, you always say, the lad said, oh, what made you go for the bouncer or the short ball? I went, oh, mate. I said, I saw him. He was thinking, he's swinging. I've got to cover the speed, get on that front foot. So I just went for the shorter ball. You just lie, don't you? And then
of course you do.
McGill come in there in the second one. And he'd got runs in Melbourne and nearly won him the game in the first innings. It was a massive partnership, and he was quite stubborn to get out. But I did him with an in-swinging Yorker in the second innings. But the boys come up. I remember the captain coming up to me and saying, right, Daz, we got 4 slips, 2 gullies, the ball's hooping. He said, he's going to be expecting short ball. So get it pitched up there. Little bit of swing out with an out ball, which he was swinging because he's a brand new ball. Always did the first 6 or 7 overs with a kookaburra. He said, you'll nick him off. So I runs in, going for the outswinger, in-swinging Yorker. Didn't get it quite right. Ended up being an in-swinging Yorker, knocked his leg pole out. So that was 2. The third one, in walked Colin Miller, Funky Miller. Not many people remember him, but what a character. And he was a good player as well. Good player, coming in. And he walks in, and I'm on a hat-trick. And I didn't even think about it, you know. And then Dominic Cork was 12th man. He come running on and said, come on, Daz, you've got to join the club. I got an hat-trick against the West Indies. I said, yeah, mate, exactly. Of a poor West Indies side. So you take your hoop, mate, and leave it to me. So I'm on the hat-trick. Captain comes over and says, same delivery, Daz. In-swinging Yorker. Just get it straight. In-swinging Yorker. You're in the game. I said, no problem. In-swinging Yorker. Runs in for the in-swinging Yorker. Swung out. Clipped off stump. Great delivery. One of the best deliveries I've ever bowled in my life. And I got the 3 and 3 at hat-trick. And like I say, I've got one of the things up on the wall there. I've not got much memorabilia in the house. These are the only 3 little bits of memorabilia probably I've got in the house, as well as my Strictly Come Dancing globe, which is just down to my right here.
And Darren, I've got to ask, you mentioned the memorabilia, 3 items behind you. Lovely looking pieces. I'm going to make a bid for them at the end of this little chat. Talk us through them.
Well, the one right there. There.
Yeah.
is that's the hat-trick, the 3 pictures of that moment when I took the wickets, the tickets in there as well from the game. I've actually got my boots in the cupboard right above me here, just there. There's a cupboard here which has got my boots and the ball from the game. So I've kept all that, and I never were one for keeping that much actual personal memorabilia. I always gave it away to charities or stuff like that. But stuff like that you got to keep for your kids down the line. The one directly behind me, right behind my head, is the kind of cap you get when every player who's played for England at the end of the career. It's just to celebrate your career, your numbers on it, your stats. And it's really, really nice. And I've had it framed there to make it extra special. And the one above is really special too. It's the 3 different caps we used to get in the 90s. They don't do it anymore, which is sad because I kind of like the way we do that, where you get the one-day cap with the 1 lion on, and the sweater's a white sweater with a blue lion. The test match is obviously the 3 lions and the crown. Same on the sweater. Still my favourite sweater, the one I got from '94, my first one. Really looks like a proper England cricket sweater. And then the touring one, which we toured under the MCC right up to the late 90s. I think it was 97 we stopped. My last one, I think it was Zimbabwe, New Zealand, where then we started to go under the one logo, the ECB logo. But we used to go under the MCC colours whenever we toured. And I used to like that. Really meant a lot when you got that different sweater with the MCC colours on and you were representing England. So it's sad, really, we don't do that anymore.
What about touring, Darren? Give us an insight into what that's like. We had Sir Alistair Cook and Freddie Flintoff. I was in conversation with them the back end of last year, and Cookie was saying that it was Steve Harmison that got him involved. He's now an absolute tragic when it comes to all things darts. He loves his darts now. In terms of you touring and back in the day, I mean, did you enjoy it? Give us an insight into kind of what you boys would get up to. Keep it clean, please.
Anything mischievous, mate. I love touring. I absolutely love touring. I have had some absolutely memorable tours, and my greatest memories of touring. I was never one for sitting in my room. Let's be honest about it. And I hated being on my own, sitting in the room. I like my own time, don't get me wrong, but I also like being around people and feeding off their energy and giving them my energy, because I've got so much energy at times. And what I used to do is, but every opportunity to play golf, I will play golf. Every opportunity, as soon as the day's free, I would be downstairs in the hotel bar, just chatting, having a coffee or having a beer or having a glass of wine. I wanted to be around people. I was never into that group of players that were into watching videos every night or playing on PlayStation or Xbox. I could never get into that. You know what I mean? I would never sit there playing FIFA for hours and hours and hours on end. And I was lucky enough, you know, to coach England. Last winter I went to New Zealand. They've been asking me for a while to get involved with the players. And it's always been difficult with the job I have in the media because it's a good job, it's well paid. And I'd have to take a big pay cut to get involved in England as a bowling coach, which they've been trying to get me to do for a few years. But it was a huge honour to be asked while I was still in the media, because I was commentating on these guys. So you've got a guy who's commentating to now coaching them. And touring with them to New Zealand for that short period, and the difference is unreal. You've gone in the 90s, like I say, where we all used to go downstairs, have a drink, go out and play golf together and all that stuff. You still get the golf party going now, but on an evening, you never see a player. You don't see the player. You got all the coaching staff who are all my age or older, all downstairs meeting, but you don't see any players. You just don't see them. And what they all do now, wherever they go, they've got that many bags. They take PlayStation or Xbox to play online gaming. And I was speaking to Stuart Broad about it, because Stuart Broad had a bit of our old school, and he's obviously been a big part of the Central Contract Brigade moving forward. And I asked him, what's it been like going downstairs every night and chatting to people and communicating and getting to know people by talking, to actually getting to know people on a computer game? And he said, do you know something? He's had to, because the way they've come into the game now, kids, they communicate, they're confident enough to communicate with headphones on over online gaming. And he said he played with Jofra Archer after he didn't play in the World Cup. He don't play one days anymore, but he only plays tests. So he said in the summer, I'd say hello to Jofra, we say hello to each other and we'd talk, the odd conversation, but we never got close. He said, so in New Zealand, I chatted to him, he said, these 3 weeks in New Zealand, I have got to know Jofra and everything about him and his personality by playing online gaming. So that's credit to Stuart Broad for adapting to the present day cricketer. But it just goes to show how we've all changed in professional sport. It's almost like you go and do your job, you go back to your room, you like your own time, you communicate by social media and online gaming, you talk to your family, then you go to sleep. You don't really go downstairs and relax because that's gone out of the game. It's almost like professional sport now is so tunneled to delivering and fitness. It's kind of lost that personal touch we all had with each other and that friendship that we all had.
You've got to give us a legendary tale, Darren. You travelled the globe, whether it was Australia, Pakistan, India. Is there one night out where you did pop on downstairs and you were accosted and the night went on a bit too long?
I've had plenty of them, mate. I've been good, especially with Freddie Flintoff. I mean, Freddie, I've carried Fred home many a time back in the day. He doesn't drink now, full stop. But back in the day, he obviously used to go too far. Fred was one of them, when he had one, he had to have 51. He was always that character. But one of the best stories, one of the best personalities I played with was a guy called Robert Croft. And he's a terrific character. And I wished him happy 50th, actually, 2 weeks ago. I'm 50 in 2 months now, 3 months. So he's just gone 50. And I used to room with him when we first started rooming before we started getting single rooms. And being Welsh, he obviously used to consider playing for England like playing for the British and Irish Lions. That's the way he considered it. He would never say he was playing for England. And so, because he was Welsh and playing for England, he had this TV crew following him round, doing a documentary on him. And obviously me rooming with him, I got to spend a lot of time on the documentary. And I remember it's been in Zimbabwe and it was Christmas time. And he asked me to say, Happy Christmas, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to everybody in Wales, in Welsh. So I said, okay, well, tell me what to say. So I said what he told me to say, which was Tush Bin Bob Saith, something like that. And what I found out later, which I didn't know at the time, is that every time I played in Wales, they used to clap me and they loved me. It means, if I can say it, it means arseholes to all English. So that's what it means in Welsh, which is hilarious. And I don't mind stuff like that. I well and truly stitched up. I've never got him back for it since. But the Welsh people absolutely give me, every time I go there, they absolutely love me. They know I was good friends with Robert and having that fun and doing stuff like that. And I even did an advert in Welsh because of it. I used to be an ambassador for this cheese company called Collier's Cheese, and it was extra mature Welsh cheddar. And I did a small advert in Welsh, so I had to speak Welsh. I couldn't even tell you what I said because hopefully I didn't say anything like I did to the Happy Christmas and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. But what a character he was. But yeah, I mean, listen, I said we played in the 90s, and when we won, we celebrated like you should do when you win a game. I had that crossover period where I played with people. I didn't quite play with Beefy at the test level, but I played against him. But I played with Gooch and Gat and Alex Stewart and Mike Atherton, and I came into that side with my generation of cricketers. And then I also had the next one, which was the Flintoffs, the Broads, and Andersons and the Hoggards. I can't believe how long I played. To only play 58 tests, when I think about it, and I played for that period from really 1994 all the way through to 2005, that shows how many injuries I actually had in that period.
Yeah.
I think I had 8 knee operations in total. And when I retired, I had the final one, which I had about 4 or 5 years ago now, which has got 8 metal screws in my right femur. But I have become friends with so many people over so many different periods of English cricket. And people can't believe it, because even Kevin Pietersen, I ended up being his best man. I'm 10 years older than him. I'm 11 years older than him. And I ended up being his best man purely because when he come into the side, I was the one who ended up kind of being his bouncer. I was at the end of my career. We were going back to South Africa for the first time. And I remember them picking me and said, listen, you're getting on a bit now, but we need you to come on this tour. We need your personality. We need your strength of character to look after this guy we're going to pick, called Kevin Pietersen. He's a strange character. He's fallen out with people at Knox, but we're going to pick him. We think he's got a tremendous talent. I said, yeah, no problem. I'll go and talk to South Africa, mate. Brilliant. Superb. So we ended up going out there, and we got on unbelievably well. Unbelievably well. And I got him in trouble, actually, our first night. We arrived in South Africa, and I took him out to this bar. He's from South Africa, obviously, isn't he? But I took him to this bar, which I'd known quite a few times, and we had one too many. But we got 2 days off because we'd just arrived. They give us 2 days off to recover from the flight, which is kind of, I mean, what are you going to do as a young lad in South Africa? But there was a test match going on for the players that were already there playing test cricket. And we came in, me and Kev came up in the lift, holding on to each other. And what he learned the hard way pretty quickly. And he was really, really loud getting out of the lift. And I kept going to him, and he was like a schoolboy. It was his first night with England. He's with me. He'd seen me playing cricket against South Africa when he lived over there, and now he's with me, like we're like best mates. And I'm going, George, Wicket. And the next morning, the physio always used to let me know. He says, right, I'm going to tell you something here. Fletcher is absolutely spewing. He heard you come in last night. But this is the coach. I said, how does he know? He said, well, Collingwood grass you up. So I now call Collingwood toenails because that's the only thing hanging out of Duncan Fletcher's backside. But I knew what I had to do, and I knew how to deal with Duncan. So what I did, I went to him straight away. On the morning of the game, the players had finished the warm-up. England were bowling, so all the players were out. So I went straight in before practice. And I goes, Duncan, I've got to admit, I went out last night, mate. I said, we had a great night. I said I'd probably won too many, and I apologise if I was a little bit loud when we come in. I said it won't happen again. He went, I caught him on it. I knew I'd got him, and he went, oh, glad you had a good night, mate. Thanks for telling me. He said, no problem at all. Let's move on. So I went back and told KP, you've got to go do this. This is your first lesson, Kev. Got to do it. He went, no. This is my first day, mate. I said, I can't go in apologising. I said, if you don't do it, he'll come for you. He said, no, he won't. You've gone in and apologised. I said, I ain't apologised for you, mate. I can't do that. And he didn't. What happened, end of play, called him to Duncan's hotel room, and he got the dressing down of a lifetime, Kev. And he came out of there, he was white, really obviously white. And I said, there's your first lesson, pal. You have got to front up. Any mistake you make, front up. If you don't front up, this is what will happen. He appreciates honesty. Just go to him and say, listen, I had a few drinks last night. He'll say, no problem, let's move on. If you don't admit your fault, he will come for you. But that's was brilliant. And but with Kev, I got to know him really well that tour. 300s he got there, he burst onto the scene. And I said at the end, you know, he was the only man I know who fell in love with himself at 16 and has remained faithful ever since. He's a diamond character. I love him to bits. He takes a lot of criticism in his life, but honestly, mate, to this day, we are pretty close. He's an amazing character and an amazing player. The best player I ever played with.
Wow, that is a heck of an accolade, that. Now, Darren, I'm going to keep you for the next 5-10 because I know you're a busy boy this evening. Before I go anywhere else, though, I've got to tell our viewers a chance to win 2 tickets to see a show of your choosing at the QE2. You've just got to tell me, comment below, I know a lot of you are watching on Facebook, how many test wickets did this man, Darren Gough, take in his career? You may, if you have been watching this for the course of the past half hour, you may have noticed I've said it once or twice. I want to come back. You mentioned KP, the best player you ever played with, Darren. Who's the best player you've ever came up against? Who's a batsman that used to give you nightmares?
All of them. In the 90s, there were some pretty good players. Let's be honest about it. Whether it be the early 90s, you get David Boone, you have Michael Slater, terrific players. Saeed Anwar from Pakistan. You go to South Africa, you got Gary Kirsten, who used to hang around, were frustrating to bowler. You got Brian Lara, obviously, Sachin Tendulkar, Rahul Dravid, Lachman. There's so many of them. Andy Flower from Zimbabwe, what a terrific player he was. But I say all those players, and obviously Lara and Tendulkar and Ponting are the greatest. Oh, Jack Callis, they're the greatest. They're the greatest four: Callis, Ponting, Lara and Tendulkar. But the one player that used to give me nightmares was Gilchrist, Adam Gilchrist. And the reason is that Australian team, whether it be early 90s, late 90s, was like the powerful Manchester United team. You get past one, you got another one coming in. You get past one, you got another one coming in. And when you were playing against Australia and you had to get past Slater, Taylor, Mark Waugh, Steve Waugh, Damien Martin or Langer, whoever it may be, because there were about 10 players all fighting for one position. After you got them out, in walked Adam Gilchrist at number 7 and decided he wasn't going to hang around. He wanted to smash you to all parts after you bowled 15, 20 overs. And he was left-handed and the ball wasn't swinging. So if it wasn't swinging and he walked in at number 7, honestly, it was your worst nightmare. And time again, he took the game away from England. We could have won so many more test matches, but because of him, we didn't. He took the game away from us time and time again. When I look back now, what I wish I would have done, because I did have that talent to bowl round the wicket and make it go away from the left-hander. That is the thing all right-handed bowlers do now. To left-handers, they all bowl round the wicket.
Yeah.
Back in my day, it was like, oh no, you can't bowl round the wicket. It takes LBW out of the game. No, it doesn't. That was just old school negative tactics from coaches back then. Now, bowlers all bowl round the wicket, take it away from the left-hander, and it brings both dismissals into the game. It leaves the left-hander, he can nick off, comes back in, he can get him out LBW or bowl through the gate. But we kept bowling over the wicket, over the wicket, over the wicket, and he kept slapping us through covers time and time again. In one-day cricket, this is when it goes really, screws you your mind. In one-day cricket, I actually bowled round the wicket to him from the start, and I had a set-up field, which I was pretty comfortable. I didn't have a fine leg. I had a real wide backward behind, and I had success against him in one-day cricket. But yet in Test cricket, I bowled over the wicket to him, and time again, he took the game away from us. So he was the one player that really gave me nightmares. Really, really did.
I always love when I speak to people like yourself, Darren, certainly from a cricketing standpoint, sledging. There's been a lot said and written about sledging. I think we'd both agree there is a line, there is an unwritten or at least an undrawn line. There's crossing it, but equally, I mean, Brett Lee told me a wonderful tale about some of the best sledges that he's heard, and he's very much the kind of old school Aussie. He says, yeah, sledging, there's a great place for it in the game. It's part and parcel. It's a bit of mental warfare. If it's done properly, it can be humorous and it can be effective. Sledging, I would imagine you took part in a bit of that in your heyday. Anyone that stand out? Was there anyone, an individual that came back at you, the quickest response that just made you chuckle as you went back to your mark?
Like I said, sledging, it's not something I've been massively into sledging. I tried to do it with my facial expression, my humour. There's a few occasions I did a couple of things, like simple little things for me. To Ridley Jacobs, Old Trafford Test match. And if you go back to the commentary on that, and David Lloyd was on commentary, they couldn't speak for 2 deliveries after, where I ran in and I pulled my tongue out, didn't I? I did the old, I pulled the tongue out that I was going to bowl the ball. So that to me is a sledge. And that affected him. I nearly got him out. Ridley Jacobs missed the ball. He wasn't happy. He looked at me with eyes of steel. He just like he was going to kill me. But I thought that was hilarious. And the players around me were laughing non-stop. The commentators were laughing. So stuff like that to me. The other one I did, which was in a one-day game, I'm now 35 years old. I'd done Strictly. And they were playing at, we were playing at Durham, weren't we? And at the castle, they'd slept in the berm, and he'd slept in Brett Lee's bed, Shane Watson, because of he'd seen a ghost, he said, at the castle. So he was scared to death. So we played against him in a one-day international the next day. And as I bowled to Damien Martin, who was batting at one end, he hit the ball back to me. And Shane Watson got in my way. And as I picked the ball up, I went to him, ooh. And he didn't laugh. He didn't laugh at all. But then I bowled the next ball. And as I followed through, he was right next to me, staring me out. So I tried to relax the situation as I would, and I tweaked him on the backside. I said, don't worry, Shane. I said, you can sleep in my bed tonight. And so stuff like that were very... and he actually came back and laughed. So he relaxed the situation. It was all over. The other one was, like I said, I'm a sociable person. I like to talk to people when I go out to bat. I like to feel loved. And when you used to go out to bat, my first tour, 1994, I was a young, chatty Brisbane, chatty character. And one of my heroes growing up watching him play was Davy Boone. He was staying at short leg. So I went out first test in Australia, and I'm trying to tack to Davy Boone, and he's just ignoring me. So I'm like, just talk to me. I just want to talk to you, mate. Hey, David, how you doing, mate? You all right? And he's just staring at me like that through the helmet. And he was a nasty man, wasn't he, old Davy Boone? He was scary to look at. And he got to me purely by not saying anything. In my head, I was thinking, what have I done wrong? Have I done something wrong? I mean, he's staring me out. He never took his eyes off me, just staring at me and growling at me. And I'm there trying to bat him. It's quite intimidating. And then at the same time, they've obviously made a conscious act, me as the young kid, first Ashes test, to come at me. Steve Waugh came running over. He said, oh, here he is, Darren Gough. We've heard so much about this breath of fresh air, this champagne cricketer. He said, but look, we all know it, guys. He's this champagne cricketer. He thinks he is, but he's only got a beer budget. Let's do him. And then you got Ian Healy shouting at me at one end. Ian Healy used to be the best. He used to be non-stop in your ear with proper abuse. So that was my first experience of Ashes. But for me personally, I never liked to really get into that abusive mode. I was never that player who needed to get fired up to deliver. Someone like Glenn Mcgrath, I realised from very early on, but he needed to sledge to fire himself up. But the best thing about Glenn Mcgrath, ask anybody who played against him, you actually never heard what he said. Because he always said it when he was walking back to his mark, he turned away from you. So you never actually heard anything he actually said. So he probably was sledging you, but he actually never sledged you to your face, which was a weird one. I don't know whether he consciously did that or he thought he was sledging you, but he wasn't, because he wasn't even looking at you.
Amazing, Darren. I could talk to you all blooming night is what I could, but I'm conscious that we are coming to an end. I want to ask Daz, and I'll take it full circle. Forgive me if I'm wrong. I don't think you won an Ashes series. I'm right in saying that 6 you played in, right?
Played in 6, lost every single one of them. Proud of it. No, I'm not. I mean, I would swap it for, mate. I played in an era where unfortunately we played against so many. Alex Stewart, I think, played 7 or 8. Oof. Alex Stewart, great cricketer, one of England's greatest, and never won an Ashes series. Mike Atherton never won an Ashes series. Graham Hick. I mean, there's so many of us, mate. Just one would have been nice. Like I said, I think most of us retired, and then England won in 2005. We came up against that strong Australian side, and the good thing is, all I can say is, but I played a little bit of a part in 2005, and that was playing in the one days in the build-up. Because just to let you know exactly the inside story on that is, I was 35 years old. Like I said, I retired as a youngster, really 3 years earlier, Test cricket because of my knee. So I was still playing one day internationals, and it was the first T20 international at the Rose Bowl. And Duncan Fletcher, we had a meeting, and the meeting went, not bothered about these one days. All I'm bothered about is the way we're going to play. We're going to be aggressive. We're going to go at Australia like they've gone against us for the last 10 years. We're not going to back down. I want Collingwood. You might only be 5'5", but I want you volleying in from cover to Matthew Hayden, who's batting, and giving him some stick. Show him, but we're here to fight this series. I'm not bothered if you lose this game. Not bothered if we lose the one-day series. We're building up to a test series. We've got this, boys. They're in a moment where they've got a lot of players who are at the edge of their career, back end, and we can take them. But it's got to be done now. And I remember having that conversation with Duncan Fletcher. But he said, I play a big part in this. 35 years old. Could be my last series. He said, go out with total aggression. They respect you, the Australians. This is why you're picked. You're in this. Lead from the front. And if you remember that 2020 international, we were bowling and I was on hat-trick. And Simons came into bat when I was on hat-trick, and I'd done it in the test match, and I could have gone and done a hat-trick, which had never been done in T20. It would have been the first one, and test matches. And I remember being on the hat-trick delivery, and Michael Vaughan, the captain, come running to me, and he said, right, you're on the hat-trick, mate. You've just got rid of Hayden and Gilchrist. Simons is in. It would have been an unbelievable hat-trick. He said, we'll put in 3 slips, even though it's a T20 game. Where do you want to feel? Short? I said, no, mate. Keep the same field. He said, what do you mean keep the same field? I ain't going for the hat-trick delivery. I'm going to hit him. He said, what do you mean you're going to hit him? I said, I'm going for the short ball. And I ran in that ball. And like I say, I'm 35 now. I'm not as quick as I used to be. And I put everything into that one delivery. And it was about setting the tone. And it was a bouncer, and it hit Simons here. And now he's a tough lad, Simons. You only have to look at the size of him. He's a big unit. He didn't flinch, but I knew it hurt. And Collingwood and everybody just charged in to surround him and give him a volley of abuse. And again, that was about setting the tone for the way England were going to play cricket that summer. And I was so proud of the lads, you know. But they went on to win the Ashes. Of course, there's a touch of sadness. Of all of us, we all would have wanted to be part of that great series and winning an Ashes series. But just playing that small little part in 2005 meant the world to me. And I was so proud of the lads to go on and win that series. They played so good cricket. And that's the benefit of central contracts. Look at that 4 bowlers England had: Flintoff, Harmison, Hoggard and Simon Jones. Played the whole series just about. Compared to my era, where every single test, we were changing every test. 1 minute I was bowling. Me and Caddick were together for a long, long period. But to have played with Caddick and Cork and Headley for longer, with Devon Malcolm to come in when we had an injury, to Angus Fraser to come in. Because Angus peaked really in the early 90s. He had a horrible injury. And he would have been a great Angus Fraser if it wasn't for the injury he had with his hips. That early 90s, 91, 92, 93, Angus Fraser was an amazing bowler. But he struggled with injury when I came into the side. But Dominic Cork, Dean Headley, like I say, and Andy Caddick would have been an absolutely brilliant 4-paced attack, with Devon Malcolm to come in the odd game and Phil De Freitas as well. We had so many good players, mate. We were never given the opportunity.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And listen, I want to take it full circle if I can, Goughy, before we sign off. You mentioned at the start, as a wee boy growing up in Yorkshire, it was football was the first love. You dreamt of being a footballer. It didn't quite work out and you moved into cricket. An unfair question this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. If I gave you the choice now, scoring the winning goal in a World Cup final for England, or winning an Ashes, the 6 to win it, to win the Ashes, what one would you choose?
Oh, playing in a World Cup final for England at football, of course I would. I have no regrets purely because if I would have made it as a footballer, I don't know where I would have been. Would I have been a lower league footballer, which probably would have been right, playing in an era where no Premier League, I wouldn't have had a great living. But the life I've had as a professional cricketer, I consider myself to be one of the luckiest people on earth. I have met some wonderful people, played in some terrific venues against some unbelievable players, some terrific memories, and we can still talk about them now, as we're doing now. Some of the greats I've played against, touring Pakistan. People used to tell me, oh yeah, Pakistan's, so you don't want to go there. I had such a wonderful tour of Pakistan. In 2001, that was one of the highlights of my career, that tour. The players, we were so close together. That togetherness and that camaraderie, to come back and be 1-0 down and be the first team to win in Karachi and win that series, then go to Sri Lanka and do it again in Sri Lanka. It's the best tour we had. And I toured, playing against Australia is obviously the highlight, but to tour Pakistan and Sri Lanka and win was unbelievable. Winning in the dark. So many good memories, mate. The only regret I have is, obviously, 31 years old, retiring at my peak, which I was. I'd had some terrific series between 97 and 2001. That was Darren Gough at his real best, and unfortunately for me, I got struck down at my real best in a one-day international in New Zealand, and never the same again. Didn't play again for 2 years nearly. Tried to come back in a test match against South Africa, played 2 tests, and I retired after that game. I just said, nah, can't be the same. So retiring, and really, my retirement, I look back and think them 2 tests in 2003, I don't even count them. I don't even count them because they weren't Darren Gough. They were just Darren Gough who wasn't the same bowler as he was when the injury struck. So, yeah, great career. Don't regret it. The only thing I'd change if I had that magic wand is, but if I could go my whole career without serious injury, obviously you're picking up hamstring injury, groin injuries, but if I could have gone my whole career without an injury, I know I would have taken 400 plus test wickets. There's no doubt about it whatsoever.
And I'm not going to argue with that either, Darren. Last one from it, and this is one more of a kind of personal question. You got to tell me, what is Adrian Durham like in real life? Your co-host of Drive Time on TalkSport. He's a polarising figure, is Adrian. Do you love him?
I do, actually. We've worked together now 11 years, you know, and there is times I come home from work sometimes and think, that guy is mad. I mean, he actually believes what he's saying as well. Sometimes his opinions, he's a strong opinionated man, and he can fight his way out of any corner, and he'll back it up with stats. That's what amazes me about him. So even if I think he's totally wrong, he ends up nearly convincing me that he's right. And that's why he's a great journalist. He's a great journalist. And I've been so lucky to work with him over the years. And he has helped turn me into a football sport journalist. So I owe him a lot. Absolutely. Him and a guy called Danny Kelly. Danny Kelly, I don't know if you know Danny. Danny is a huge character, huge person actually. And he used to work with Danny Baker a lot in radio. Fantastic broadcaster. I learned so much working with him early on in my career, and from Adrian. So I owe him a lot, and still to be working in a football-dominated radio show after 11 years gives me enormous pride, because not many people last. You take the last 2 or 3 years, but I've done it now 11, 12 years.
It's amazing, Darren. I'm a huge fan. What you do, you and Adrian, drive time 4 till 7 on TalkSport in the UK. It's award-winning, is what it is, Darren. It's a testament to you, your character. I can't thank you enough for giving us an hour of your time this evening. Before I let you go, let's see if you know this answer to this question. I've got a funny feeling you will, because, of course, it is about your career. How many wickets did Darren Gough take in 58 English tests? The answer is, Darren?
I've got a tattoo here. Let me have a look. 229.
229. 229. The team will be in touch with one lucky. Darren, bless you, my man. Keep doing what you're doing. You've had an incredible career. You've chiselled out a heck of a career in the world of media now as well. The best of luck to you, Darren. And yeah, happy birthday for the big 5-0 in a couple of months' time.
Thank you. Thanks. Enjoyed it.
Darren Gough there, an England cricket legend, now doing his stuff, top sport over in the UK, a fantastic man, and as you heard there, the bouncer for KP, that's one of the big takeaways from me. A big thanks once again to each and every one of you for tuning in this evening. A big thanks to Theatre by QE2, to H2 Productions, to Dollars and Art, to Book My Show, and last but by no means least, to Outside the Box Events. My name is Chris McCarty. It's been an absolute pleasure to be in conversation this evening with Darren Gough of England cricket fame. I'll be back to do it all over again next week. From England to Scotland next week, I'm in conversation with rugby royalty. It's the Hastings family. Cannot wait for that. Until then, folks, have yourselves a wonderful Saturday night, and do make sure to tune in again on Monday, because Tim Elliott, again, he replaces me. He's the week boy. I'm the weekend guy. He'll be back on Monday. Until then, folks, good night.